Hello, and welcome to the first annual new member review kickoff meeting. NPERS Internal Audit has concluded its first ever annual new member review for all 265 school plan employers, and we are prepping to start for the second round. We wanted to provide a short video to explain what to expect, some guidance on eligibility for new members, and the findings from the fiscal year ending 24 new member review. The names of the audit team are listed. However, Erin MacArthur will be the one conducting these reviews. So be on the lookout for correspondence coming directly from Erin. In order to stay as close to 30 minutes as possible, we are just going to jump right in. What can you expect for the fiscal year ending 25 new member review? Let's first go over what the new member review is and why we are conducting it. A full employer audit has approximately 8.5 years between audits. This allows for timely reviews of incoming members across all school plan employers, and taking the test out of the full employer audit decreases the amount of time for each full audit, allowing for shorter audits and less time in between. Now, I know some may be saying that 8.5 years between is nice because, frankly, most people don't enjoy audits. We understand that retirement is just a small part of what you do. And to be completely honest, most of the time when we conclude an audit, the employer's feedback is that there should not be as much time in between audits. And they wish that, especially for new employers, they would be audited immediately. Our audits include education and provide a chance to discuss your specific situations one-on-one, leaving you with a written documented response for future use. What will we test? We are looking for timely enrollment for eligible members, making sure enrolled employees have met eligibility requirements to include lawful presence in the United States, classification of service, if they meet the intention of hours to be worked for mandatory enrollment, and/or if they met mandatory participation based on working an average of 20 hours a week in any 3 calendar months of the plan year, which is July through June. Within the review, we will also check to ensure the hours reported are accurate for selected members. What to expect? When it is time for your school to be reviewed, you will receive an email notifying you of the review. You will be requested to provide hire dates for all new members under 1,000 hours for the fiscal year ending 25. 1,000 was selected as the cutoff, as 1,000 hours equates to 1 full year of service credit. However, anything below provides only a partial year of service credit. You will be asked if any of the new members were not U.S. citizens, and if not, you will need to provide documentation supporting lawful presence. For those members that do not appear to meet the hours eligibility threshold, you will be required to provide additional documentation supporting enrollment. Internal Audit uses a separate software called Audit Board. So you will be given a link for the software and instructions on how to use it within that email. You will upload all documentation, answer all follow-up questions, and resolve any findings through Audit Board. The initial email you receive will be similar to this one. It will provide information about the process, and at the bottom there will be a link to access the software. This link will open the task in Audit Board where you will need to answer questions and upload your documentation. The email address will come from noreply@auditboard. Know that if you are commenting back on a question, even through the email address itself says no reply, you simply just need to reply to the email. When you click on the link for the task, it will look similar to this. You will answer the questions directly within the task. You can leave any comments or questions within the comments box. To upload your documents, you can simply drop the files here or browse your files for upload. Once you upload the information, you need to hit Submit. Each task will have a due date of 1 calendar week. We understand this is a new software and process, so if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. Let's have a refresher on determining eligibility. We do have several tools available on the website that can help you determine eligibility. The retirement plan eligibility checklist will walk you through each question, provide definitions, exceptions, and warnings. It provides a place for you to have the member sign it if you would like. The document itself is a fillable PDF that you can electronically save in a file to provide documentation on why someone was or was not enrolled, or you can print it out and save it that way. The calculator tool provides an Excel document that has the formula to determine if the non-contributing employee met the threshold for mandatory enrollment upon working an average of 20 or more hours a week in any 3 calendar months of the plan year, July through June. The spreadsheet will highlight in green where there is an eligible month and highlight in a red warning when contributions need to start. The only information you need to input is the actual year and the total number of hours worked during the calendar month. The sheet itself will take the total number of hours worked during the calendar month, divide it by the number of days in the month, and multiply it by 7 days in a week to get the average hours worked in a week. The School Employer Manual is your main resource that supports employers' directions for retirement rules. This manual is consistently being reviewed and updated. If you have a question for retirement, we request that you review the manual first and determine if your answer can be found there. If not, it might be something we need to add. So let us know if there is something additional that we can add to support you as you process retirement. Here is a closer look at the eligibility checklist. I know it's too small to actually read, but it just shows you the layout of the tool. This is not required, but something you can use to help support eligibility. The tool provides the classifications, asks the questions to determine eligibility, and provides places for signatures if you would like to use this with the employee and have them sign it as part of an acknowledgement. At the kickoff meetings, we provide guidance and use it as an educational session as well. So let's go over eligibility. The first thing I want to make sure everyone is aware of is that there is no enrollment forms. Many times you will hear schools say that they didn't enroll the employee right away because they didn't turn in the enrollment forms. This is a mandatory plan and has no enrollment forms. The forms people are typically talking about are the beneficiary form and or the vesting credit form. So number one, you must provide the beneficiary form to the employee, but it is up to the employee to turn it in. If your process is to turn the beneficiary form in for your employee, know that as soon as they meet mandatory enrollment, you simply withhold contributions and you do not need to wait for them to return any forms back to you. Number two, you must provide the vesting credit form to the employee as well. The employee has 180 days to return that document to NPERS. This form is to establish vesting in the plan from other retirement plans if the member does not become vested from the service provided at your school. When establishing eligibility, we first need to make sure that they are 18 years old or older, and then determine if they are a U.S. citizen or lawfully present in the United States. LB 198 was passed on 3/18/24, providing a new process to determine eligibility. As the employer, you first need to determine if the employee is Code 33 DACA status. If the employee is DACA status, they are not eligible to contribute. If they are not DACA status, then you must get one form of documentation to support lawful presence. In some cases, it very well could be the form used to determine the status in the U.S. Otherwise, there is a long list of documents to help support lawful presence, to include something as simple as a driver's license. The change this last year was part of LB 295, which added a Department of Motor Vehicle Learner's Permit to that list to support lawful presence, and then included the ability to accept expired documents extended by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security or U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. LB 295 did not change the fact that DACA employees are ineligible to participate. Once you have their age and citizenship or immigration eligibility established, you must define what classification of employee they are. Temporary and substitute are ineligible employees and are defined in statute for retirement purposes. Temporary employees are hired for a limited period of time, not to exceed 1 year, to complete a task or job, and when that task or job is complete, the employment ends. Substitute employee is a temporary employee hired to fill in temporarily for a regular employee that is temporarily absent. What if there is not a person they are filling in for, but it's a vacant position? Well, then it's not substitute for retirement purposes. The only eligible classification is a regular employee. Typically, if the employee does not fit into either the temporary or substitute classification, they would fall under the regular classification. This classification is for someone that is hired on a regular and ongoing basis. To establish eligibility for regular employees, we then need to determine what the intention of hours to be worked is. If the intention is 20 or more hours a week, they have met mandatory enrollment. If the intention is less than 20, or you do not know the intention, then you would track all hours of service and only enroll them if they end up working an average of 20 hours a week in any 3 calendar months of the plan year, July 1 through June 30th, and those months do not need to be consecutive. To determine the average, you simply take the total number of hours worked in a calendar month divided by the number of calendar days in the month multiplied by 7 days a week. After they meet the 3 calendar month, then you would enroll them immediately in the next payroll period. A quick note while we are talking about hours, in determining eligibility, you need to add all hours together to include your substitute and temporary hours when looking at how many hours they work a week. So if the member is already contributing, all hours and wages are pensionable and reported to NPERS. In determining the average of 20 hours a week threshold, here is the calculator tool referenced earlier. The only thing you need to enter as the employer is the plan year, so 2026 for the current school year we are in, and then the total hours worked in the calendar month. The spreadsheet automatically calculates what the average is, and you can see the green highlighted qualifying month in the status column when the averages rises to at least 20. This spreadsheet specifically shows 88 hours put into each month and shows that only 3 of the 8 months reflected an average of at least 20 hours. You can also see in the enrollment indicator column that it highlights that the employee must be enrolled in the plan on the next payroll period. You can see when the actual contributions would start then for the March payroll period. We can't talk about eligibility without talking about reemployment. If you have a contributing member at your school terminate and come back to work at your school, you must confirm whether they took a distribution. If they did take a distribution, assuming they sat out their 180-day separation period and had no prearrangement to return to service, you would follow eligibility rules as if they were a new hire. However, if they did not take a distribution and were rehired as a regular employee, regardless of the intention of hours to be worked, they must begin immediate plan participation. All right, let's go into the fiscal year ending 24 new member review results. Across all 265 school plan employers, there were 4,918 new members. Of those new members, 2,408 were tested at 48.96%. Within the number of employees tested, there were only 78 total employee findings at 3.24%. Common findings: when looking to establish eligibility by the intention of hours to be worked, several employers used a range of hours to be worked, with the minimum number of range being less than 20. In other words, for a 5-day work week, the intention of hours to be worked was 3 to 6 hours a day, at 15 to 30 hours a week. Although the maximum side of the range extends beyond the required minimum 20 hours a week for mandatory enrollment, the minimum of the range is less than the required minimum for eligibility. As it is a range, there is no documentation to support the individual will be working a minimum of 20 hours a week. The next most common finding was early enrollment. And thinking back on the calculator tool for establishing the employee worked an average of 20 or more hours a week, employers either started enrollment on the 3rd month or realized they would be working more hours and put them in before meeting the mandatory threshold. Remember, the employee must meet the 3 months in the plan year. They don't have to be consecutive, but only then after meeting the 3 months, you would enrollment on the next full payroll period. Instead of enrolling someone who you assume looks like their hours are increasing, we need documentation to support either A, the hours increased, or B, they met the average of 20 or more hours a week, mandating enrollment. We also saw people using different formulas to establish the average of 20 hours or using a standard 80 hours a month and qualifying the month as one of the 3 eligible months. The next finding we saw was enrolling coaches simply because they were a coach. Remember, we have to go back to the eligibility rules. First, are they 18? Then are they lawfully present? Then, are they a regular, temporary, or substitute employee? Once you establish if they are a regular employee, then you need to determine how many hours they will be working. Nothing in eligibility questions ask whether they are a coach. You have to establish their classification and then intention of hours. The last finding is a big deal. Your plan is based on actual service hours to establish eligibility, but ultimately your lifetime benefit amount is contingent upon the total service credit, which comes directly from the service hours reported. You should get the benefit you deserve, no more and no less. When the service hours tracked are inaccurate, it could lead to someone in the plan that shouldn't be in the plan, or worse, someone that should be in the plan that is not in the plan. Consequently, when service hours reported are inaccurate, you may not get the lifetime benefit you earned. It is essential that actual service hours are reported. That is all I have for you today. Thank you for attending and or watching and taking the time to work through the retirement rules. We look forward to working with you soon.